Hello, everyone. Welcome to my webinar on Revelation, the third stage of spiritual unfoldment. Let's begin. So, trying to move. The Tarot Tableau is one of the many arrangements of the 22 major arcana cards. At the top is the Fool. The remaining 21 cards are in 7 columns of 3 cards each. So I'm reiterating what we covered on the last webinar only because some people new to this don't quite understand what the Tarot Tableau is. So each time I do one of the stages of spiritual unfoldment, I'll cover this in the first couple of slides. So each of the 3 rows represents an attribute. The top row contains 7 principles or dominant mental states. The second row represents agencies or activities. And in the bottom row are the conditions or expressions of the principles of the upper row, manifesting through the agencies of the middle row. I'm trying to close this. So, it's not, there we go. Each of the 7 columns represents a level of spiritual unfoldment. From left to right, the columns represent bondage, awakening, revelation, organization, regeneration, realization, and cosmic consciousness. Let's look at the third column, Revelation. We will cover the remaining 4 columns in the future. And we're doing this about once a month, somewhere in the first or second Saturday of each month. The third column of the Tarot Tableau. So far we've covered the first 2 stages called bondage and awakening. In this third stage called Revelation, we begin to recover from our previous errors of separateness, the idea that we think we are separate from each other, and the shock that we experienced at that discovery to realize that we're not separate. With a flash of lightning, true knowledge has toppled the crown from the tower of common sense. We enter a period of calm and gradual growth. At this stage, the new concept of the oneness of all begins very gradually to unfold within us. Here are the 3 keys of that column. So what happens during this unfoldment and the specific activities involved may be discovered by looking at the keys of the 3rd column. Here we have the Empress, which is key 3. And she's the active principle at the top. Below her is the Wheel of Fortune, key 10, the agency through which the active principle represented by the Empress moves. And below the Wheel of Fortune is the condition of revelation, as represented by the star, key 17. And we'll begin with a study of the picture of the star. Now, it's also to your edification that if you revisit my blog, you can look at each one of these cards individually. You can read about them, and then you can always come back and listen to the webinar again. It may be clearer to you because I don't go into great detail of each of the cards. I'm now just covering the concept of how they interact. So if you've forgotten certain things, it's fun to just go back and review them by reading. You can either read them or listen to the previous webinars from my site. So key 17, the star. Here is developed the esoteric meaning of the Hebrew letter Zadi, named the fish hook. In the Sefer Yetzirah, which is also called in English the Book of Formation, this letter is assigned to meditation. And I've also mentioned the Book of Formation is a founding important book to the Kabbalah. it's an explanation, but it's in mathematical formulas to a great extent. In the Kabbalistic scheme of the paths on the Tree of Life, Key 17 is the 28th path. It joins the victory card, the victory sphere on the Tree of Life, to foundation, the 9th sphere. Astrologically, Zadi corresponds to the zodiacal sign Aquarius, the sign of the man. We're saying the man of the 4 elements. And it is ruled by Saturn. So that's the important part of this, that Zadi corresponds to Aquarius, which is the sign of man, or mankind, and is ruled by Saturn. So let's take a further look at Saturn. Saturn is the 21st key, the last key of the tarot tableau and of the picture cards of the major arcana. And it's called the world, and it also can be called cosmic consciousness, which it is a symbol of. In mythology, the god Saturn was said to eat his children. And maybe you've all heard this, and you think, oh, that's pretty gross. And so the esoteric psychology demonstrates that cosmic consciousness, when it becomes a personal experience, swallows up all of its differentiations. So just think about that. In esoteric psychology, we find that the cosmic consciousness, when it becomes a personal experience, when you are fully realized, God realized, all of your differentiations are swallowed up because you're one with God. As Saturn was father of the gods, so is the cosmic consciousness really the source of all other modes of consciousness. So you return to that. All the modes of consciousness that we have experienced up to this moment, they are differentiations of cosmic consciousness. So what you go through in your daily life at this time are all the little variations of this one unit called cosmic consciousness. In many of the books of wisdom, the methods that lead to cosmic consciousness are described as the path of return. But it's interesting to note that in astrology, Saturn is commonly regarded as a malefic influence and is said to be constricting, limiting, and confining. That's kind of an interesting thought compared to the fact that it is the representative planet for cosmic consciousness. Saturn seems to have an unfortunate influence on ordinary worldly affairs. But if you think about it, the reason is that ordinary worldly affairs are conducted from the reference point of limited three-dimensional consciousness. They are therefore based upon the illusion of personal separateness. To those engaged in the vain endeavor to build their house of life on the shifting sands of common sense, the influence of Saturn is unfavorable or even harmful. This is not the case with those who have developed and are living from a consciousness of the unity of being. With that consciousness, we find that the forces of limitation are transmuted and become the means of concentrating the life power into definite and specific forms of expression. That's a very interesting concept. It seems to be a reversal of what Saturn means, and therefore we will explore that and give you a feeling of why this is the case. That with cosmic consciousness, we find that these forces of limitation are transmuted. You actually need to have them, and you have to learn how to use them. Concentrating the life power is what is found depicted in the star key of the tarot. It is the foundation of the growth and increase in wisdom characteristic of the third stage of spiritual unfoldment. Meditation has been described as an unbroken flow of knowledge in a particular object and begins with concentration. Concentration is a voluntary limitation of consciousness. That limitation is Saturnian in quality. Its consequence is understanding. So this is how it ties together. We find that in the Tree of Life, that the sphere of Saturn is the third sephira, or sphere, called Bina. Bina means understanding. And I will add here that Bina is the archetype for the feminine principle on the Tree of Life. What is the foundation of your consciousness? Is it based on personal separation or unity of being? Meditation slowly draws you into the consciousness of unity of being. It's not an intellectual awareness, but visceral, a deep inward feeling. The consequence of experience is understanding. And I'm sure you've all had this experience that you think one thing, you have a concept about something, and you go to test it by actually functioning from that point of view, and then you understand whether it works or not. Or works in all occasions, or only works in a few, and there's other things going on. So the consequence of experience is understanding. As you begin to practice meditation, you find yourself actually responding differently to situations, not because you thought to do so or figured something out, but your response comes from a place that may even surprise you in its clarity. And I've had people tell me that, oh, I was having an argument with someone, or I normally thought of, somebody else as difficult, and we were having a discussion, and this calmness came over me, and I just said something I hadn't even thought of. And it was like my whole feeling and being changed, and I was conciliatory, and there was just something else going on, and I didn't know where it came from. But I'd been meditating, and I had been doing this sort of thing, and all of a sudden there was something else coming out of me. And it was a learning experience. Meditation is simply prolonged concentration. This is, according to the Kabbalists, liken it to a fishhook. The analogy is a good one. A central assumption of the ancient wisdom is that every center of the life power is related to the whole life power. The many are expressions of the one. The one is conscious of all the details of its expression in the many. In its perfect knowledge, past, present, and future are united. It knows the whole of its self-expression, as a whole and in detail. Our personal consciousness is but the specialization of this constant consciousness. And since the life power is omnipresent and omnipotent and perfectly free, there is nothing to prevent its communication to one of its personal centers of any detail of knowledge that it possesses. So that's very interesting. This is what some would say as above, so below, but it also means this is better than the internet. I just want to mention that. You can, quote, Google God and get an answer once you've developed the practice of meditation. But you see, everything is there, not just the limited information on the internet. Amazing. And it's immediate if you've really worked on practicing. But Jesus also said, of myself I can do nothing, yet he also said, all that the Father hath is mine. An interesting path. We do nothing of ourselves. The illusion of personal effort persists, but the more we know it for what it is, the less we are deluded by it and the riper we are. And of course, becoming riper is becoming more cosmically conscious, more aware of our source within us, not outside of us. Success in meditation cannot come until we realize that just as the life power is the teacher and worker, so is it really the one who engages in meditation. That's interesting. You're not separate. The life power works through you. So in reality, we have to realize that just as the life power is both the teacher and the worker, the recipient, so is it really the one who engages in meditation. We do nothing of ourselves. We are instruments through which the life power does certain things. Through us, it concentrates. Through us, it meditates. Through these activities, ripens us into perfected centers of all-embracing consciousness. So this is a positive thing. It's a very interesting thing. There's no control going on. It's just you have access to all of life's energy, power, force, and energy if you get out of the way. But you begin to also realize as you meditate that there's no separation, and all sorts of things start to open up because of that awareness, that acknowledging who you are, and what you're doing. Let's return to the connection between Zadi, the fishhook, and what goes on in meditation. The inner consciousness or subjective mind, or we also say subconscious mind, is often compared to a sea and the various forms of knowledge to fishes swimming in it. When we select some particular object for concentration and fix attention upon it, we are baiting the hook and dropping it into this sea of subconscious mind. As the fish are attracted by bait, so are various forms of knowledge having an affinity to the object of concentration attracted to our mental fish hook. Okay, so landing your fish. Say, for example, that you fix your attention upon one of the tarot keys. You may not see much in the beginning, but the longer you watch, the nearer you will come to this experience. So, that experience is some detail of the symbolism will be emphasized in your consciousness, and a glimpse of the meaning below the surface will come to you. So this is the time to land your fish. Make a note of what you have glimpsed. So when you meditate, it's good to have a piece of paper next to you that you can write down things that occur to you that you've never heard before. Because what you're doing is, as a metaphor, attracting these various fish of knowledge to yourself. And they're very personal, so this is a personal notebook. After you've made a note of the phrase or thought that you've just landed, cast in your hook again and watch until another thought form takes bait. So this is kind of an interesting way of approaching meditation. You're not out there being all holy and it's difficult and blah, blah, blah. It's actually just fishing. But you also need to always maintain a mood of expectancy that something's going to happen. This, of course, reminds me of the cat sitting outside the mouse hole. That cat will not look left or right or up or down. You can't entice it with pieces of treats or whatever. It's watching for the mouse, and it wants that mouse. And it knows the mouse will only come out there at the mouse hole. So you have to maintain a mood of expectancy, like the little cat waiting at the mouse hole. Your subconscious mind is like a bay opening into the ocean of cosmic consciousness. Thought forms from the farthest reaches of that great sea of mind will be drawn to you by meditation. There is no such thing as a secret or as a lost art. Nothing is lost. Everything you do, everything's going on, is all recorded by the great subconscious mind. So Jesus said, quote, "Nothing is hidden that shall not be revealed," unquote. This is what he means. The words are sober truth without a tinge of exaggeration. Meditation is the method of the life power's self-revelation. It reveals itself to you. If you go back and look at the card on the star, you don't discover the Isis, who is the figure that you're looking at. It reveals itself to you. Isis reveals herself to you. So meditation is the method of the life power's self-revelation. So physical changes also take place. So the name fishhook is also a clue to something else that happens in meditation. For human beings, every kind of mental activity has physical accompaniments. These physical changes caused by mental states are by no means limited to transformations of the cells in the brain. Remember, the cells of the brain are part of your nervous system, which permeates your entire body. In the Hebrew alphabet, the fish is the letter Nun. The Book of Formation assigns to this letter Scorpio. So we're taking the term fish hook and dissecting it and just looking at the fish part of it. So it assigns the letter Nun to Scorpio. Scorpio is the zodiacal sign which rules the part of the body corresponding to foundation, which is the 9th sphere on the tree of life. So you can see it over there on the left. It's that purple sphere. As a fish hook draws fish out of the water to be eaten, so right practice of meditation lifts up the nerve force which energizes the organs ruled by Scorpio. It converts that energy into the food for the growth of the spiritual man. We're moving towards something a little different than just what the 5 senses tell us. This third stage of unfoldment, although it makes use of and modifies the nerve force, which is ordinarily employed in the sex function, it has nothing to do with that function itself. So if someone, well, we'll let your imagination run wild with that one. Right meditation releases and lifts up the serpent power, the Kundalini, stored in a nerve center at the base of the spine. In yoga, it is the Muladhara chakra. I may have not said that exactly correctly, and is known as the sacral plexus in the human body. In meditation, the force stored in this ganglion, which is a nerve center, is made to rise, so that it energizes in succession 6 other centers, of which 4 are in the trunk and 2 are in the head of mankind. So you can see the figure. So we're starting to move, because we place our attention through meditation, we start to concentrate our attention. It starts to activate this force. So you don't have to go and concentrate on each of the chakras. This is something that a teacher would tell you not to do. Don't twirl those chakras, because you can place yourself out of balance unless you're a teacher, unless you are advanced. You want this all to be a safe, natural trip up through the different chakras. So you just meditate. It is the safest way to go. You can surround yourself with light consciously and think of that. I have met people who have been assisted incorrectly and have had their entire nervous system thrown out of whack for years. Just shaking nerves, etc., because someone worked on just one of their chakras and they weren't ready for it. So this can be very dangerous, but it's also a very safe journey if you understand about meditation, and then as you get to know and work on concentration exercises and focusing, and then learning about nature around you at a nice, regular pace, everything will be revealed to you. We don't want the ego to run the show. So the great yellow star in the card, the star, is surrounded by the 7 chakra centers, which are the 7 little white stars. And they're all 8-pointed. The latter indicates the true source of the force which is modified in meditation, the latter being the great yellow star. It is identified with the prana of Hinduism and the ruach of the Hebrew scriptures. And we, in the West, would call it spirit. Remember, in your work, you are not trying to control some power which is your personal possession. You are simply learning how to obey certain laws of a universal energy, the limitless light. Because the primary activity of this light is a whirling motion concentrated in Kether, which is also known in English, the crown on the tree of life, which is at the very top of the tree of life. It is represented by an 8-rayed star. The rays are like the 8 spokes of the wheel of fortune. Also, you'll find on the fool's garment all of these spheres that are circles with 8 spokes on them. The ageless wisdom, again and again, proclaims the folly of the man or woman who thinks that he or she can save his or herself. They tell us that, little by little, the life power ripens its personal centers, which is us, to the point where they become able to understand and apply the law of liberation. I think I've talked about this. You have to remember that as you enter into the world of meditating on a regular basis, and we've just talked about how it raises up not just your consciousness, but it actually raises up the body you're in, the nervous system, the cells. They become more light. And it's actually physiological. They start to function at a higher rate of vibration, and they become more sensitive to the dense vibration around them. But this takes a while. And if you've ever been in a yoga class, you can learn different postures, but your ability to connect with the core, which will hold you up better, and rotate your arm muscles out externally, and do all these little, very tiny little tweaky things so that you don't injure yourself, which you can very badly in yoga if you don't know what you're doing and understand the alignment. This is the same thing in meditation. Allow yourself the time. When you meditate, don't just look at things as you meditate. Ask questions about things. The activity of doing it starts things going that are under the surface, and you don't know they're happening. But the subconscious mind, remember, runs your vehicle, runs your body. So it's doing all sorts of things that you're not aware of until a point where you become aware of them, because there's a tipping point. And this continues throughout your journey, that you will continuously hit these tipping points that are for you. I know that when I'll attend a class in yoga, and they'll call it a level 2, 3. But there are parts of my body that still are a level 1. There are other parts of my same body that are a level 2. And there's a few parts that I can actually do some really odd yoga posture on a level 3. But it's all mixed up. The body is growing in all different parts. Negative cells are being cast off. So you have to allow for the process. Take your time, be kind to yourself. As you can say, okay, I meditated for 3 weeks every morning and I don't have cosmic consciousness. This is not going to happen that way. Plus, it will be a danger to your body. You don't want to short circuit yourself. So there's lots of things going on here. So each person's liberation is a particular fulfillment of cosmic law. The beginning of meditation is concentration upon things of the external world, upon facts reported through the senses. And if you remember the card of the star, you'll see that there are one pitcher of water is pouring onto the earth, and there are 5 streams coming out of it, and that's in reference to the 5 senses. Whatever the particular object you select, bear in mind the fact that the life power already knows all about it and perceives its true relation to other objects. Make yourself receptive to the influx of this knowledge by holding your attention to the selected object in the expectant mood. Oops. Key 10, the Wheel of Fortune. This is the second card in our column. As a result of this practice, you will gradually begin to perceive the unity behind the various appearances of the external world. The longer you meditate, the clearer will be your understanding of that which is symbolized by the Wheel of Fortune. This is a whirling symbol. Gradually, you will begin to identify your personal consciousness with the consciousness of nature, or natural intelligence. You will begin to know that the operations of your mind are linked to that great system described by Ezekiel as wheels within wheels. This is the beginning of your practical experience of the truth of non-separateness. And I tell you, it has to be a practical experience. You're moving out from the intellectual ideas of what's going on to physically feeling a change in your body. You actually can experience a raising of vibration, and you'll know it. I remember someone telling me, oh, rub your hands together and then hold them about 2 or 3 inches apart, and you can feel this energy moving through them. Wait till you have this practical experience when you're chatting with a friend, and all of a sudden your whole body has that wave of energy going through it, because the person's receiving something from you, and the life force moves through you to give to that person. And it can happen at any time as you start to meditate and focus your attention within yourself and develop your 5 senses' spiritual nature. When you see that all your mental states are phases in the manifestation of the one consciousness, which directs the growth of trees and grasses, the flight of birds and insects, the flow of streams, and the sweep of ocean currents, you are beginning to exchange mere intellectual assent for that true knowledge which has been called the doctrine of the heart. Can you imagine sitting in meditation and you have your attention focused on one object, and you're sitting there, and all of a sudden you have this sensation or flash, and you see yourself looking out from a blade of grass. Or you're looking out through the eyes of another person. You're actually in them looking out. You go, oh, MG. You start to become one with the universe. And they're like little flashes, but they're gentle. You want to go through this gently. There's not going to be big, trumpet calls, etc. You'll start to viscerally to feel, to be there. And it's cool. And it's your experience. The 5 spiritual senses. Your experience of life comes through your 5 senses. As your meditation practice evolves, you will discover that you also have 5 spiritual senses corresponding to your physical senses. As your heart opens up, so will these senses open up. You will have access to them. You're not going to go into most churches and have them teaching you about the 5 spiritual senses. You have the sense of sight. Can you imagine doing it without having to use your eyes? That you can see without having to look through your eyes. You can hear without having to look through your physical ears. You can taste and smell that which is not right in front of you. Remember, you have a spiritual body. And at some point, you will evolve so that these spiritual senses are more active. And it's a slow journey because we don't want you freaking out. Neither do you want to. But it's kind of exciting when these little spurts of energy come and you go, oh, I can see in the next room. And I'm here in this room. Things that are interesting. But what happens is it's not intellectual. It's actually, because you're raised up, the consciousness of harmlessness to others and doing good to other people and serving people. And because you are linking yourself to everyone, your criticism of them falls by the wayside. Criticism is a real death trap of yourself and people around you. Oh, that idiot. Oh, this. Oh, I hate someone. You can't have it. These centers will not open up because you're hating yourself. Sorry to tell you that. Even some really outlandish people, you just can't do it. You have to really, and your meditation will take you past these limitations that we think were separate. And it's a great adventure. Review the 3 keys when you finish reading this. You may wish to meditate on each of these keys individually, and then place them together in a row or in a column, and just look at them and record what you hear. And the thing is, this sort of thing is nothing that, at the beginning, you may get one word or nothing. What you're doing is you're setting up a pattern. And the pattern will start to grow. It's like learning to drive a car. You first learn how to drive it very slowly. And then eventually, if there's an accident coming up, you can swerve around it very easily. You're not afraid. You are more in control. Well, that's what you're doing. You're learning to operate the vehicle you're in. This wonderful gift from our Creator, through which we get to learn about our Creator and then find out that we're completely united with everything, with all of nature. So here we are, Mother Nature. This is the Wheel of Fortune key. With this experience comes a new understanding of what is meant by Mother Nature, which is the feminine aspect of the life power. That is why all three cards of the tarot that relate to the third stage of unfoldment emphasizes the feminine. In Key 3 and Key 17, the central figure is a woman, actually the same woman. In the 10th key, the title of the card points to the working of the same feminine power. For this is the Wheel of Fortune. The Wheel of Fortune is the goddess whom the Greeks called Panthea, or she whom all the feminine aspects of deity were synthesized. It is she who makes meditation possible. Remember, it is the life power which through us manifests its ability to meditate. And that ability is the work of the universal subjective or feminine mode of consciousness. All we have to do is to get our personal selves out of the way. Thank you for attending my webinar on Revelation, the third stage of spiritual unfoldment. Please go to my website on www.gatesoflight.com. It's at WordPress for more information about the symbols and colors of the keys. I will also be posting a recording of this webinar on my website in the next few days. Does anyone have a question?